Trooper Beth Anderson responded to a wellness check at 6:47 a.m. on a January morning when the temperature had plummeted to -32 degrees. A concerned wife reported her husband hadn't returned from ice fishing on Lake Superior, and his truck was still parked at the access point after 18 hours. "Ma'am, how long has your husband been ice fishing?" Anderson asked Karen Mitchell over the phone. "He left yesterday at noon. He always comes home by 6 p.m., even in good conditions. He knows I worry. But his phone goes straight to voicemail, and his truck is still there. Something's wrong." Anderson drove to the lake access with Trooper Michael Chen, who specialized in winter rescue operations. They found Derek Mitchell's pickup truck exactly where his wife had said, covered in fresh snow, but otherwise undisturbed. His fishing gear was missing from the bed, suggesting he'd taken it onto the ice. "Visibility's maybe 50 feet in this wind," Chen observed. "If he's out there, we need to move fast." Equipped with cold weather gear, they set out for the frozen lake. Although it was safe to walk on the more than 2 feet of ice, the blowing snow caused whiteout conditions that made it dangerous to navigate. They discovered Mitchell's fishing shelter, a tiny heated tent arrangement with a hole drilled through the ice, about 300 yards off the coast. The interior was kept at a comfortable temperature by the propane heater, which was still operating. Derek Mitchell, however, was not inside. He had his line in the water and his fishing rod in the right position. His coffee thermos was still warm and half full. His cell phone, which had several missed calls from his wife, was resting on the cooler. Everything indicated that he had just left and would be back soon, with the exception of one particular detail that chilled Anderson to the bone. Footprints were visible leading from the shelter toward the center of the lake. They weren't Mitchell's boots, though, as though someone had ventured out into -32 degrees without shoes. These prints of bare feet were plainly visible in the snow. "Are you seeing this, Chen? There are bare footprints 32 feet below. You can't survive that. Within minutes, whoever made these would have suffered from severe frostbite. They followed the prints, which maintained a steady pace with no signs of stumbling or distress." After 200 yards, they found Derek Mitchell. He was frozen solid, standing upright in the middle of the lake, arms at his sides, eyes open and staring north toward Canada. His fishing clothes were intact, his boots still on his feet. But his face showed no signs of distress or panic, just peaceful acceptance. "Jesus Christ," Chen whispered. "How long would it take to freeze like that?" "Hours minimum." But his wife said he left yesterday afternoon. That's 18 hours ago. More disturbing was what they found around Mitchell. 5 more figures, all frozen in identical standing positions, all facing north. 3 men, 2 women, all in various states of dress ranging from full winter gear to summer clothing, and all with that same peaceful expression. "This isn't one incident," Anderson said. "This is multiple disappearances." Chen checked identification on the closest body, a woman in a summer dress, perfectly preserved by the extreme cold. "Margaret Sullivan, reported missing 6 months ago from Duluth. She was last seen near a different lake. They documented all 6 bodies, finding identification on 4 of them. All had been reported missing from various locations around Minnesota over the past year. All had been near frozen lakes when they disappeared." "They didn't freeze where they were found," Anderson realized. "Look at the ice around them. It's smooth, undisturbed. If they'd been standing here for months, the ice would show marks from their bodies settling, from freeze-thaw cycles. These bodies were placed here recently. Placed by what?" That question became more pressing when they noticed the bare footprints didn't stop at the frozen figures. They continued across the ice, heading toward open water visible in the distance. an area where the lake hadn't frozen completely due to underwater currents. Nobody could reach that open water and survive, Chen said. The cold would kill them halfway there. But the footprints suggested otherwise. They led directly to the water's edge and then disappeared. Not stopped, not scattered. Disappeared, as if whoever made them had walked into the freezing water and not surfaced. Anderson radioed for emergency response. Within hours, the scene was swarmed with law enforcement, medical examiners, and confused officials trying to understand how 6 people from different incidents had ended up frozen together in the middle of Lake Superior. Dr. Lindstrom examined the bodies and found impossible details. They didn't freeze naturally. The ice crystal formation in their tissues suggests they were flash frozen at temperatures far below anything environmental. We're talking minus 200 degrees or colder. That's not possible without industrial equipment. I know. But the evidence is clear. These people were frozen instantaneously, then positioned here. And here's the really strange part. They all have water in their lungs. Lake Superior water. They drowned before they froze. Drowned? The lake is frozen solid. Surface is frozen. But if they somehow went under the ice, into the water beneath? Lindstrom trailed off, looking at the frozen lake with new fear. Detective Olson arrived from St. Paul with case files on all 6 victims. I've been tracking these disappearances. All of them were near water. All vanished during cold weather, and all were last seen alone, near ice or frozen lakes. What connects them? The problem is that nothing is immediately apparent, varying locations, ages, and professions. However, I discovered something in the statements of witnesses. According to reports, 3 of them behaved strangely before going missing, walking irrationally toward the water and not answering calls. Anderson spent the next week thoroughly researching the phenomenon. After looking through decades' worth of missing persons reports from Minnesota winters, she discovered trends that had been hidden when looked at separately. Near frozen water, at least 40 people have gone missing in the last 20 years. Bodies never recovered. Most never found. However, sometimes, as is the case now, they would be discovered frozen in impossibly difficult positions, displaying signs of drowning, even though they were discovered on solid ice. It's in the water, Chen concluded after reviewing the evidence. Something in Lake Superior, maybe in all the large Minnesota lakes. It calls to people, draws them out onto the ice, somehow takes them under despite the frozen surface. Agent White from the FBI arrived with classified information. You're not the first to report this pattern. We have similar cases from Michigan, Wisconsin, anywhere with large frozen lakes. The phenomenon seems strongest during extreme cold snaps, when temperatures drop below minus 20 degrees. What is it? We don't know. Best theory is that extreme cold creates conditions where something that normally stays deep underwater can come closer to the surface. Ice fishermen and people who spend time on frozen lakes sometimes report seeing shapes moving beneath the ice, shadows that are too large to be fish. Anderson returned to Lake Superior with Chen, determined to understand. They walked out to where the 6 bodies had been found, now marked and documented, but still frozen in place until spring thaw would allow removal. And they saw it. A shadow beneath the ice, massive and serpentine, moving with slow purpose. Not a fish, not anything that should exist in freshwater lakes. Something that predated human settlement of Minnesota, that had lived in the deep, cold waters for millennia. It's hunting, Chen realized. Using the ice as a platform, drawing people out, somehow pulling them through solid, frozen surface into the water below. They backed away slowly, and the shadow followed them, visible through the thick ice like a whale beneath a glass-bottomed boat. But this was no whale. The shape suggested nothing from known biology, something that had evolved in conditions far colder than modern Earth. When the ice melts, it goes deeper, White explained later. That's why summer lakes are safe. But in winter, when the surface freezes, it comes up to hunt. It's adapted to cold, maybe even requires extreme cold to function. And it's patient. It can wait beneath frozen lakes for months waiting for someone to come close enough. Anderson tried to warn ice fishermen, posting bulletins about dangerous conditions on Lake Superior. But how could she warn about a threat that officially didn't exist? How could she tell people that something ancient and predatory lived beneath Minnesota's frozen lakes, that the ice that seemed solid and safe was actually a hunting ground? Derek Mitchell's widow received his body once it thawed enough for transport. The official report listed cause of death as exposure and drowning, which was technically true, but criminally incomplete. Anderson kept a map of Minnesota's major lakes, marking reported disappearances near winter ice. The pattern was undeniable. Circular areas around each lake where people vanished, always during extreme cold, always without explanation. And every winter, when temperatures dropped below -20, the disappearances would resume. One here, two there. People drawn onto frozen lakes by something they couldn't resist. Pulled through ice that should have been solid. Drowned in waters that should have been unreachable. The cases remained officially unsolved, listed as winter accidents or misadventure. But Anderson knew the truth. Minnesota's frozen lakes held something that hunted during the coldest months, using ice as camouflage, pulling victims into frigid waters through mechanisms that defied physics and understanding. And sometimes it would arrange its catches in frozen tableaus, displaying them on the surface like a gallery, 6 or 7 bodies standing in peaceful death, facing north as if awaiting further instructions that would never come, warnings to others that would never be adequately understood. The ice fisherman who wasn't alone, because something had been waiting beneath the ice, patient and hungry, ready to claim another victim for its frozen collection, another body to display until spring thaw made retrieval possible and the truth could be buried beneath official explanations that satisfied no one who'd seen the evidence firsthand. Trooper Michael Chen received the emergency call at 11:34 p.m. during a blizzard that had closed most highways across northern Minnesota. A snowplow driver named James Peterson reported seeing his own plow truck ahead of him on Route 2, claiming it was impossible, but he was following his own vehicle. "Dispatch, I need clarification," Chen radioed. "The caller is following his own truck?" "That's what he reports. He says the truck ahead is identical to his. Same DOT number, same damage patterns, same license plate. He thinks he's losing his mind." Chen knew Peterson. 20-year veteran plow driver, steady and reliable, not prone to hallucinations or panic. If Peterson said something impossible was happening, it deserved investigation. "I'm en route. Keep Peterson on the line. The drive through the blizzard was treacherous, visibility near zero, snow accumulating faster than plows could clear it." Chen followed Peterson's GPS signal, finally spotting both snowplows in the distance, one following the other, both visible only as ghostly shapes in swirling snow. Chen pulled alongside Peterson's truck, signaling him to pull over. Both snowplows stopped, but when Chen looked ahead, the lead truck was gone. Simply vanished in the seconds it took Peterson to stop. "Did you see it?" Peterson climbed out of his cab, voice shaking. "Did you see my truck ahead of me?" "I saw 2 plows. But when we stopped, it disappeared. Like it was never there." Peterson was a large man, weathered by decades of winter driving, but his hands trembled. "Trooper, I've been following that thing for 40 minutes. It's me, my truck, my route, my exact driving pattern. When I speed up, it speeds up. When I slow down, it slows. It's like I'm chasing my own ghost." Chen examined Peterson's truck. Minnesota DOT 247, distinctive dent in the front bumper, specific wear pattern on the plow blade. Completely unique identifier. "Has this happened before?" "Never. I've driven this route for 20 years, never seen anything like it. But there's more." Peterson pulled out his phone, showing dash cam footage. "Watch this." The footage showed exactly what Peterson described. Another identical snowplow ahead, clearing the same road. But there were details that made Chen's skin crawl. The truck ahead didn't leave tracks. The snow it plowed simply disappeared, rather than being pushed to the side. And occasionally the driver's silhouette was visible, wearing the same jacket, same build, same posture as Peterson himself. "I tried calling my own radio," Peterson said. "The dispatcher patched me through. I heard my own voice answering, telling me to turn back, that this route wasn't safe. Then the connection cut out. Chen's radio suddenly crackled with Peterson's voice, but Peterson was standing right next to him, not transmitting. "Unit 247, be advised. Temporal loop detected on Route 2. All units proceed with caution. The blizzard is creating timeline overlaps." "I didn't send that," Peterson said. "I know." Chen checked his radio settings. The transmission had come from Peterson's truck number, but from a timestamp 3 hours in the future. "We need to leave this area," Chen decided. "Something about this storm, this location. It's causing time to fold back on itself." "You're not seeing a ghost of your truck. You're seeing your actual truck from the future, completing this same route hours from now." They drove back toward civilization together, but the phenomenon continued. Every mile or so, they'd spot the phantom snowplow ahead, clearing road they hadn't reached yet, showing them their own future. And occasionally, they'd see other vehicles that shouldn't exist. Cars that were too new. Trucks with license plates showing future registration dates. "The blizzard is a temporal storm," Agent White explained when she arrived the next morning, after the weather had cleared. "Certain meteorological conditions create electromagnetic anomalies that affect linear time. You weren't following a ghost. You were following yourself from hours ahead, seeing your own future actions as they happened." "That's impossible." "So is dash cam footage of a truck that doesn't leave tracks. So is radio transmissions from the future. Yet we have evidence of both." Over the following winter, the phenomenon repeated during major blizzards. Plow drivers reporting seeing themselves ahead on their routes. Truck drivers following vehicles identical to their own. State patrol officers spotting their own patrol cars miles ahead, responding to calls that hadn't come through yet. "It's getting stronger," Detective Olson reported. "First winter, we had 3 incidents. This winter, we've had 17. The temporal loops are lasting longer, becoming more visible." Chen documented every case, finding disturbing patterns. The phantom vehicles weren't just visual anomalies, they were physically affecting the timeline. Roads that the phantom plows had cleared showed actual cleared pavement, even though the real plows hadn't reached those sections yet. "The future is bleeding back into the present," Dr. Lindstrom theorized. "During extreme weather conditions, time becomes non-linear in Minnesota. Actions that will happen are creating effects in the now, causing drivers to encounter their own future selves. The implications were staggering. If future actions were visible in the present, did that mean free will was an illusion? If Peterson saw himself completing his route in the future, was he destined to do so? Or could he change course and create a paradox? They tested it. During the next major blizzard, Chen deliberately deviated from his patrol route after spotting his own cruiser ahead. The Phantom patrol car continued on the original route while Chen drove away. But video footage from the original route showed Chen's actual cruiser had been there, seen by multiple witnesses, even though Chen himself had turned away. "You existed in both timelines simultaneously," White said. "Your future self completed the original route, while your present self deviated. Both versions were real. Both existed. Both affected the physical world." Peterson quit snowplowing after the third encounter with his future self. "I can't handle seeing myself out there, knowing that in 3 hours I'll be right where that ghost is, following my own tire tracks, completing a route I've already seen completed. It's too much." Chen continued patrolling, but with new understanding. Every major storm brought temporal overlaps, moments when past and future bled into present. He learned to recognize the signs: vehicles that didn't quite match the current timeline, radio transmissions from hours ahead or behind, accidents that showed evidence of emergency response before the crash actually occurred. Minnesota's winter storms were more than weather phenomena. They were temporal disruptions, creating conditions where time became non-linear, where drivers encountered their own futures, where actions that would happen created physical effects in the now. And every winter, more drivers reported seeing themselves ahead on storm-swept highways, following phantom vehicles that were both ghost and prophecy. Warning and preview, impossible but undeniably real for those who witnessed their own future completing routes they hadn't yet driven through blizzards that bent time as much as they obscured vision. Detective Sarah Olson took the call at 7:23 a.m. on a February morning, responding to a van found abandoned on I-94 with the engine still running and 4 bodies frozen inside despite the heater operating at full blast. When she arrived at the scene, Trooper Anderson and Chen were already there, looking disturbed. 4 victims, Anderson briefed. Parents and 2 children. Frozen solid despite the van's interior being 68 degrees. No signs of violence, no carbon monoxide, no explanation. Olson examined the van's interior through the window. The Thompson family, Mark and Lisa Thompson, their children Emma, 7, and Joshua, 4, sat in perfect position as if driving to a destination, but frozen so solid that their bodies appeared crystalline, ice visible beneath their skin. How long have they been here? That's the strange part. The van was called in 20 minutes ago by a passing trucker, but according to the GPS system, the Thompsons entered this highway rest stop 6 hours ago. They've been sitting here all night, engine running, heater on, slowly freezing despite the warm air. Dr. Lindstrom arrived to examine the bodies. What he found defied medical explanation. These people froze from the inside out. Their core temperature dropped to -40 degrees while the environment around them remained warm. It's as if something sucked the heat directly from their bodies while leaving the air untouched. That's thermodynamically impossible, Olson protested. I know, but look at this. Lindstrom showed his temperature readings. The van's interior was a comfortable 68 degrees, but within 18 inches of each body, temperature dropped precipitously, creating spheres of extreme cold around each victim. Whatever froze them is still active, still drawing heat from a localized area around their bodies. Are they... Anderson hesitated. Are they alive in any sense? They're clinically dead. No heartbeat, no brain activity. But the ice formation in their tissues is unusual. It's not random crystal growth. It's organized, almost geometric, as if something was controlling the freezing process. Olson investigated the Thompson family's last known movements. They'd been driving home to Minneapolis from a weekend in Duluth, routine trip they'd made dozens of times. Their last credit card transaction was at a gas station 40 miles back. 3 hours before they entered this rest stop. 3 hours to travel 40 miles, she noted. They should have made that distance in 30 minutes. What were they doing for the extra 2.5 hours? The van's dash cam had been recording. Olson reviewed the footage and found gaps, periods where the camera simply stopped recording, showing timestamps that jumped forward without explanation. But in the recorded segments, she saw something disturbing. The family appeared normal at first, talking and laughing. Then, gradually, they became quieter, their breath becoming visible as if the temperature was dropping. But the dashboard temperature gauge showed steady 68 degrees. In the final recorded minutes before the camera stopped, Mark Thompson spoke. "Do you feel that?" "The cold. It's inside us. Something's in the van with us." Lisa Thompson had been looking around frantically. "I don't see anything. But I feel it. Like ice water in my veins." Then both children had started crying, complaining of being cold despite wearing coats. And Mark had pulled into this rest stop, presumably seeking help. But by then, it was too late. The footage showed them sitting here, frozen solid within minutes, their bodies turning crystalline, while the heater continued pumping warm air that made no difference. Whatever killed them was inside the van, Anderson realized. It wasn't environmental. Something got into their vehicle and froze them from within. Over the next week, 2 more vehicles were found with frozen occupants. Same pattern, engine running, heater on, bodies frozen solid while the environment remained warm. 8 people total, all on Minnesota highways during extreme cold snaps. "It's spreading," Agent White said grimly. "Or more of them are emerging. We think they're attracted to heat sources during the coldest weather. Vehicle heaters, warm bodies, anything generating thermal energy. They parasitize that heat, absorbing it directly from the source." "They? What are they?" "We don't have a name." "They're not biological as we understand it. More like thermal entities. Consciousness that exists as cold itself, that feeds on heat to maintain coherence. During Minnesota's coldest winters, they become active, seeking warm environments to parasitize." Olson couldn't process it. "You're saying sentient cold is killing people?" "I'm saying there are forms of existence we don't understand that manifest under extreme conditions. These entities appear to be crystalline consciousness that exists at near absolute zero temperatures. When they encounter heat, they absorb it, not maliciously but instinctively, like a plant absorbing sunlight. How do we stop them?" "We can't. We can only warn people. During extreme cold, below -30, avoid sitting in running vehicles for extended periods. Keep moving. Don't let your body temperature stabilize in one location for too long. The entities seem to lock onto steady heat sources. But how could they warn without causing panic?" Official bulletins advised against idling vehicles during extreme cold, citing carbon monoxide risk. But the real danger was something that couldn't be explained in press releases. Olson kept case files on all the frozen victims. She noted patterns. All died during record cold snaps. All were stationary in vehicles for more than 30 minutes. All showed that same inside-out freezing pattern. The entities were hunting heat signatures during Minnesota's coldest weather, draining thermal energy from victims who thought they were safe inside warm vehicles. And each winter brought more cases. Not many, 3 or 4 incidents per season, but enough to establish pattern, enough to confirm that something was using Minnesota's extreme cold as hunting season, parasitizing heat from victims who never understood what was killing them until ice formed in their bloodstream and consciousness faded into crystalline cold. The Thompson family became another statistic. Another case file marked unexplained death due to environmental exposure, even though anyone who'd seen the evidence knew that exposure didn't explain bodies frozen solid while sitting in heated space, didn't account for the geometric ice patterns in their tissues, didn't address the thermodynamically impossible heat loss that had killed them. Olson continued investigating, documenting, trying to find patterns that might allow prediction or prevention. But the entities were patient, infrequent, impossible to track. They existed as cold itself, activating only during Minnesota's most extreme weather, seeking heat to drain, leaving frozen corpses as their only calling card. And every winter, when temperatures dropped below -30, another family or individual would be found frozen in their vehicle, engine running, heater on, bodies turned to ice from the inside out, while warm air circulated uselessly around their crystalline remains, offering heat that something unseen had already consumed. Trooper Beth Anderson, Trooper Michael Chen, and Detective Sarah Olson met at a Minneapolis diner on a rare, warm winter day, comparing notes on 3 phenomena that had redefined their understanding of Minnesota winters. Things in the lakes, Anderson listed. Temporal loops in blizzards. Cold entities that parasitize heat. 3 impossible phenomena, all connected to extreme cold. Chen added, "It's not the cold itself that's dangerous. It's what the cold allows." Creatures from the deep lakes rising when water freezes. Timeline disruptions during electromagnetic storm conditions. Entities that can only manifest at temperatures below -30 degrees. "Minnesota has always had harsh winters," Olson said, "but it's like the cold is getting alive, conscious, using extreme weather to support forms of existence that can't survive in normal conditions." They reviewed maps and data, finding correlations. The lake creatures' hunting patterns matched temperature drops. Temporal loops occurred during specific electromagnetic conditions that only manifested in heavy snow. Heat-draining entities appeared exclusively when thermometers dropped below -30. "What changed?" Anderson asked. "These phenomena might have always existed, but they're more frequent now. More visible." "Climate extremes," White suggested when they consulted her. "Minnesota's winters are getting more volatile, colder cold snaps, heavier snow, more extreme conditions. That's creating perfect circumstances for these entities to manifest more frequently." The implications were disturbing. If extreme cold enabled impossible phenomena and climate change was creating more extreme weather, then Minnesota's winters would become increasingly dangerous in ways that had nothing to do with frostbite or hypothermia. "We document, we warn when we can, we try to understand," Anderson decided. "But we can't protect people from dangers that officially don't exist." They continued their duties through subsequent winters, each one bringing new encounters with the impossible. Ice fishermen who vanished through frozen surfaces. Drivers following their own future vehicles through blizzards. Families frozen solid in heated cars. The cases accumulated in classified files that few would ever see. Evidence of a truth that comfortable science refused to acknowledge. Minnesota's winter was more than seasonal weather. It was a doorway, a condition, an environment where impossible things became possible, where extreme cold created spaces for entities and phenomena that couldn't exist under normal circumstances. And every winter, when temperatures plummeted and snow piled high and wind created whiteout conditions across frozen landscapes, the troopers and detectives would respond to calls that couldn't be explained, document evidence that couldn't be officially recognized, and bear witness to horrors that would haunt them long after the spring thaw came and the lakes melted, and the temperature rose to levels where impossible things retreated back into whatever spaces they inhabited when extreme cold wasn't there to support their presence. The frozen cases remained unsolved, officially attributed to environmental exposure, or winter accidents, or misadventure. But those who worked them knew the truth, that Minnesota's coldest winters held dangers beyond ice and snow, that extreme temperatures created conditions for hunting and haunting and horror that transcended natural explanations. And somewhere beneath frozen lakes, within temporal loops created by blizzard conditions, in the crystalline consciousness of entities that existed as cold itself, Minnesota's winter held its secrets, patient and eternal, waiting for temperatures to drop far enough for the impossible to become real once again.